Time now for this week's Health Matters, in which we revisit last week's Health Matters. It's Gut Health, Part 2.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Okay, the big reveal this time.
There's no big reveal in gut health.
Good. I think that could be a really messy situation. All right. So how did we leave it? We left it with, as I recall, just gut health is this emerging field, and we're just starting to kind of understand how much we don't understand about it.
Right. So what we left it with is, what does average Del Norter do? So recommendations include have mostly a vegetarian diet, consider at least being partially vegan, and then eat a lot of fiber, a lot of fiber, avoid alcohol, and really avoid antibiotics. And so this summary came from what's called a American Gut Project, which is a cool citizen science program that works out of UC San Diego. But they also work internationally. So they're looking at samples in the United States, UK, Australia, and 42 other countries. So if you're interested in doing this yourself, $99 gets you a kit, and you can see what your personal bowel situation is. But here's what they have found over the years. It looked to me like they started maybe in 2006. They've been around for a while. That eating a diversity of plant types. So when you're eating a lot of fiber, it should be a diversity. So like for me, I probably eat tomatoes, corn, potatoes, and asparagus and salad. And so I got to branch out.
Really? That's not diverse enough? You've got a bunch of different things going on in there.
No, you're supposed to do 30 different types in a week.
Oh my God.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
I don't do 30 types of food in a week.
Yeah, I don't eat that much either, actually. So, but maybe it's a good idea to actually be taking more fiber in. It's not really a bad thing. It can help you in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And most importantly, makes you not feel hungry, which is kind of a constant thing for me. So 30 different plant types, that makes your gut happy. Stay away from antibiotics. We kind of talked that one to death. But what I thought was interesting about that is that it takes a year for your gut to rebound.
That is surprising.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, so if you've been sick with a cold for 3 days, you don't need a Z-Pack. You really don't.
That's a separate issue. You don't need a Z-Pack, but specifically for your gut health.
Well, if you go for a Z-Pack, then you're going to be messed up for about a year, as far as your guts think. But remember, we also get antibiotics from agricultural sources.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be a problem if people are eating meat, which most people do. So, but here's some other cool things they found out. They were able to find a link between microbiome composition, so what's in your guts, and depression.
Wow.
And here's what was surprising to me is that they found it to be true in the United States and also in the UK to the same extent. So there wasn't really a difference. And they don't know the mechanism. They don't know why that should be. But if they find out, that would, number one, sink the antidepressant industry, probably, if we could get people to...
That's kind of sinking anyway. But yeah, that
kind of...
it is as they find other things. But so basically what I'm taking away from all of this is you can't have a typical American diet and expect that your gut's in any kind of good shape.
Yeah, you really can't. And if you live in a food desert, like maybe Klamath or something.
Wow, then you're really, really hard.
Unless you go off the grid and you do, you get a good garden and live off hunting and stuff like that, fishing.
I'm sorry, I've got this whole other thing just popped in my head, this whole coast to coast, like a conspiracy theory thing. About I read somewhere one time about the different civilizations that had sprung up in our various river valleys around the world over the course of human history, and why some civilizations, and what they all shared that enabled these different civilizations, the Indus and Tigris Euphrates and I forget where else. There were others, right? There's in the Yangtze, the Yellow River, places where we've just been living for a long time. But there were other places that didn't happen for some reason, and they were comparing all sorts of different environmental factors, like the Mississippi River never had, big, huge cities be. I mean, it did, and you had the mound, the mound builders and the people in the Ohio area, things like that.
Which I think are probably bigger cities than they were given credit, but not really
comparable. Now there's, I've read things about just how big these cities were, but it's not the same as Egypt, right? They're not making pyramids like that. They're not building armies and spreading out and waging wars and things like that on the scale that these other. And so they look at the civilizations that grew up and maintained themselves and became things. And one of the things they look at is diet. Like, what was available in the environment there? What kinds of foods would these civilizations have sustained themselves on? Did they get enough protein? Did they get enough of these other things? And I'm wondering if, when we look at things and when we look at factors like that, if down the road someday we'll be looking at, what was their gut biome like? And did it put them in a place that made civilization possible, at least, or some follow along kind of complexity resulting in civilizations? That just popped into my head as you were talking about this.
Interesting.
Very interesting.
I know the people that lived along the Klamath, so Yurok people, I think mostly in our neighborhood, they ate like 250 pounds of salmon a year.
Wow.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Average consumption. Nowhere near that now. There's another study that I looked at, or it's through the National Institute of Health, but it's called the Human Microbiome Project. And I thought it was really interesting. They're more like not coming up necessarily recommendations. They're still trying to do the foundational science of this, because, as you know, we're learning
data collecting, right?
It's super complicated, and it's there's not even the technology to completely understand it. But they're doing a lot of DNA analysis and trying to figure this out. And so their phase one was from 2007 to 2014, and that's where they were just setting up the technology.
Oh, wow.
And then their phase two, 2014 to 2016, they were looking specifically at how it relates to health. Now, I think the article I was reading stopped at 2016 because that's when the article was written. So I think that's probably an ongoing thing.
Right.
But what they found that was kind of fascinating to them is there's different microbiomes and different organ systems, and we kind of alluded to that previously. So depending on what part of the body and what exactly it's trying to do, it has different tools or microbiome tools, I guess. And that kind of surprised them, although I don't know why. I mean, that seems kind of obvious.
What sort of systems are we talking about? Are you talking about like cardiopulmonary things as well,
yes.
alongside?
So that's part of this. And so they're finding microbiome players, I guess, in places that were long thought to just be sterile.
Wow.
And then how that relates to disease is like a mind blower, I think.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So
boy, I hope you're not a germophile listening to this.
Well, I've always liked germs.
But... No, of course, exactly. Well, of course you have.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's oh my, your very health, your very existence is being predicated upon.
Yeah, we try not to think about it.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So, and there's obvious that we expect germs, quote unquote, to be in places like our gut and on our skin.
Yeah.
But these are places that were thought to be sterile.
Right.
So sterile, like the eye, the surface of the eye, in the lungs,
in the inside,
within lung tissue, in the placenta. I was like mind blown.
Right there with the microplastics they're finding in there now too. Yeah.
Right. Inside the uterus, which blows me away because, like, when I put IUDs in, I spend a lot of time making sure that everything that goes in
is nice and sterile.
Clean. Yeah.
Well, you don't have to do that. Just blow on it.
Yeah.
There you go.
And within the urinary tract, which is kind of amazing to me.
Is it just, any place you can be infected, right? Can you also have a biome?
Yeah, and for a long time they thought, okay, well, let's take the stomach, for example. There's no way with the pH that there's any kind of life that could live in the average stomach.
Right.
But there is.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of. So H. pylori, and it turns out Helicobacter pylori is actually a pathogen.
Oh my gosh.
Probably in most people a hanger-outer, and every once in a while a pathogen. So it's definitely a cause of gastric cancer. It probably needs triggers, like
Yeah.
like some of the risk factors that people have, like too much alcohol, cigarettes, stuff like that.
Right.
But
Wow.
that kind of brings up the other thing that they found in this study is what we think of as the bad actors. They're actually sometimes good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it kind of depends on the circumstance that is created by external forces or maybe genetic predisposition, on whether that is going to be a problem or actually a help.
Right.
And so that's weird for me in medicine because, take Clostridium difficile, for example. So that causes an intestinal problem and when it overgrows in the intestine, and that's from too many antibiotics. I mostly see it here in this county. It's more and more common actually, and people have dental problems that they can't get their teeth fixed, and so they buy a little time by coming in and getting on antibiotics.
Oh, right.
The bacteria that are causing dental infections are becoming more and more resistant to the standard amoxicillin. So now they're recommending Augmentin, which is like kill all. And what happens when access to dental care actually becomes a risk factor for intestinal infections?
Wow. So lack of dental health care, access to dental health care, being an indicator,
Risk factor.
A risk factor.
Yeah.
Thank you for so many other follow along health problems.
Right.
That I can think of no more real, tangible, and as you point out, local example of just how intricate this all is.
Oh, completely. And it's becoming more and more resistant. So the one thing is C. difficile, which is a normal bacteria in the bowel, actually does good things. It stabilizes the rest of the microbiome communities. I don't know really what that means, but okay. So it's got a good side. And people who take a lot of antibiotics end up, who have to for their teeth because they don't have access to actual reparative care to solve the real problem. They end up with C. difficile, and so now it's becoming more and more common. It used to just be a board question, you would never see it. Now
Wow.
I've seen it a lot. So the Clostridium difficile is becoming more resistant to the easy antibiotics that we could use to treat it. And right now the treatment of choice is a fecal transplant, which is like ick.
the way you said that, that is like, that is. So do we finally find something in healthcare that makes you even go ick?
Yeah, I was wondering how I would actually do that. So what they do that is they find somebody who lives usually in the person's house who has healthier bacteria, maybe because they have different health problems or they're just younger and healthier themselves. They get a specimen, probably really controlled. They make a little capsule, like a slurry of it, and then a little capsule. And for some people, they just can't swallow that. It's not like you can taste it. It's just a whole creepy idea. And now what they do sometimes is still endoscopically just put it where they want it.
Wow.
So that way you can ensure it's gotten through the stomach acid.
And that's a way to transplant. I mean, basically a gut biome then, right?
Right.
Wow.
But here's the super cool thing. It's 85 to 90% effective.
Whoa.
That's like an elegant little solution to a really bad problem.
Yeah.
So if we had access to care here, I don't think it's impossible to get it done here, but it's not usually people get referred out.
Right.
Probably to UCSF. If we could get dentists plus that, then this wouldn't be so many things would not be problems anymore. So.
Wow.
The other thing too is, and this blew my mind, is the microbiome is important in about 20% of cancers, especially bowel cancers. That's not really a surprise. But I mean that it's that high of a percentage, but that it's mostly bowel cancers doesn't surprise me.
Right.
Okay. And mostly what the microbiome does that's on the side of good is that it helps maintain bowel health through kind of as a protective mechanism. Okay. Going back to H. pylori, you have a little bit of H. pylori in your stomach, but it can be crowded out by other bacteria. That's helpful. Then your risk is a little bit lower as long as you don't have pre-existing conditions or aggravating factors. Super complicated. But it also helps with treatment. So if you get rid of H. pylori, it seems like your possibility of gastric cancer goes down. But here's the deal. Same thing. If you throw a bunch of antibiotics at somebody and the treatment for H. pylori is complex and hard to tolerate, it really makes people vomit.
Right.
Then what happens is you have to go to a plan B and a plan C, and it gets more and more and more intense. So you really can get down the rabbit hole. So it's better just to stay healthy. Healthy biomes also protect against inflammatory bowel disease. I think I've mentioned this, like ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease.
Yeah.
But one thing that I thought was cool is it also can protect against transmission of HIV.
How's that?
Because it mostly supporting the natural protective mechanism, say in the rectum or in the vagina, probably in the mouth too, although I don't know that for sure. And it's like the guards at the frontier are protecting against the attacking forces.
So I mean,
probably the best way to look at it.
So should the examples of the biome that you give there, I mean, basically taking on an active role in the immune system,
right?
Yeah, more than just like feeding it or you setting it up to work effectively, but an active role in it.
Yeah, and I think in order to have that, you actually have to have a balance too. So. It's probably more than, just this one bacteria. So that means you can't really go to the store and find a little bottle of that one bacteria.
No, you've got to understand
what
your own...
You've got to create an ecology. And since it's so complicated, we don't really know much about it.
And each person can be different.
Yeah.
Even a little bit, just a little different. Wow.
Yeah. So super complicated, but also microbiomes. This is cool. They contribute to the longevity of healthy aged people, and there actually is a certain a genus of bacteria that seem to be in the intestines of 100-year-olds, healthy 100-year-olds, like blue zone 100-year-olds, and they. And they're probably not at the point where they can market it, although I'm sure somebody's thought of it.
Somebody's trying, sure.
But how do you, as a person who's lived 100 years, have all your cards fall in the perfect place so that you actually have that? I don't know. It's super complicated.
So if you live in a blue zone, you can get a bunch of your friends together and you could sell like mail order fecal transplants.
That's right. Maybe you can use fecal transplants for more than, but you don't just send it down. You have to support it too. So, and that part's not really known. I know it gets crazy.
Cause this just seems so, I don't even know as a scientist how somebody could make sense of all of this, of just the diversity of expression, of examples, of the fact that everybody is going to be their own biome in their own context, and then to try to engineer some sort of guidelines to help people along those. I think
it's super exciting that we have this understanding, and this is a growing understanding, and that it kind of keeps boiling down to the same 5 things that you do to remain healthy.
Right.
So the repetitiveness of what conclusions we can make, I find really comforting. And, that we even know this is a thing.
What do you mean?
Like when I was a student, this was like voodoo. This
really?
was the no data zone, man. We didn't speak of such things. So that medicine
Voodoo.
is willing to look at it, I think is exciting. But the last fact I have that came from this particular project in the National Institute of Health is that we have a microbiome associated with death.
What? What's this?
So after people die, then enzymes are released. Cadaverase is one group of enzymes. So
okay.
ACE means enzyme.
Just to start tearing you up?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then that kicks this certain group of microorganisms into, starting the cleanup. So decomposition is kind of at least partially mediated by
your
our
gut biome.
It's
Or
the gut. It's a portion of the gut biome that is probably, just held in the ready until the enzymes activate it.
Wow.
And so we can't get away from it even in death.
No. No.
So
God, I wonder. So, how long after you die does your body die then finally? Or what's in your body
what's
die?
death?
Yeah, exactly.
There's
right,
a lot of
right.
different. Let's assume that it's, I don't know, 20 or 30 minutes maybe. There's some.
That short, you think? Wow.
Yeah, it depends what part of it. I
Yeah.
mean, it's like not everybody gets the word at the same time.
Well, because just like to biodegrade, to start tearing yourself apart, and I mean that's microbiology feasting on you. It's almost at some point like when you die, you become all gut biome, or at least
Right, and I think this particular group of bacteria are probably located in the gut. That makes sense. And then you also have, but this is not like the innocent bystanders who are just there because they're giving out free meals.
Yeah.
This is a
their
group
job.
that is their job.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
They've been evolved to do this.
Wow, that's so interesting to me.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a way to call them off. If
Right,
somebody's
right.
resuscitated after an hour, is there a way to call them off?
Is
I don't know.
Or if you don't have those, then do you just don't rot? You just you're your own biologic mummy.
Yeah, maybe that's what happens in the incorruptible saint.
Yeah, right.
It's
Yeah.
They're just missing those germs or something.
Again, it's so complex. Wow.
Yeah, so there is no. I went into this looking for something to say to you that would comfort you in your search for the perfect gut biome.
There isn't.
Or total body microbiome more than the guts.
Right.
And there isn't.
There isn't.
And
one.
I think that's part of the frustration with this topic.
Yeah.
Is they're really, except for the usual 5 things that we always talk about.
Right. Which are just
nothing new. There's nothing easy.
No, well, yeah. There isn't a pill. There isn't a magic bullet. There isn't something like. One thing that this reinforces in me is this growing sense of just how porous we are. I mean, last time you talked about there being, or last week when we recorded, you talked about there being about the alimentary canal basically being just this open tube, right? that you encompass, and just even more than that. I mean, our health, our very emotional health, everything, just based on these environmental factors that can get inside us and under our skin, just all the time. That's surprising to me. That's just amazing to me.
That kind of grosses us out, and we don't want to think about it, but I think we should.
I don't get the gross. I know people who do get the gross out from that. I don't get the gross
those
out.
little bugs crawling in your eyelashes.
Yeah, that's never grossed me out. Really? Does that get to you? Is that a thing?
No, it
you don't
grosses patients out.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
obsessed with them.
Well, yeah, and now they're more than that. They're crawling through your body. And more than that, the very idea of who you are is dependent on some of them.
Right.
That's remarkable to me. That's incredible.
It is incredible. So I'll look forward to, as growing as a provider, how these data and kind of conclusions, at least temporary conclusions in science, can guide my practice.
You talk about growing as a provider. I'm curious, is there a sense that, and this just might be a reflection of my own, layperson's paltry understanding of the situation, but it seems that as time goes on, the nature of just being a doctor, being in healthcare is changing. Isn't going to change, but is already changing in that you will all have to become much more, quote unquote, and this was, I think, a bad word a generation ago, holistic in the approach.
Completely.
And that there isn't more synthetic as opposed to analytic. Instead of tearing things apart to get to that one little thing, there isn't just one little thing. It's how they all come together.
Yeah, totally. And you can't really poo-poo something that's
funny
alternative. Yeah, poo-poo. You can't really diss something that's alternative because, in 2 years it could be the thing.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So,
Man.
there's an abundance of directions you could go, and technology is going to bring a lot. But I think body wisdom is an amazing thing, and we should listen to it more often.
Right, right. And I think also there's something to the reality of being a biologic thing living in a specific place. So the context, the environment where
Right.
you are. There's a difference between people who just live in two different places
Right.
because of where they live.
Right. So the personal is political. So that, access to healthcare
Yeah.
here is, or no access to healthcare here can affect people in like way more ways than we
Right,
know.
right.
So it isn't just Del Norte people losing their smile by the time they're 30 because all their teeth are pulled out.
Yeah, no, this is shortening their lives.
Sets
It's-
them up
Yeah.
for either a shorter life or a more miserable life
Mm-hmm.
because of health problems. And so if somebody had access to dental care, then maybe they wouldn't have this or that or this.
Yeah.
So that's what I keep coming to and kind of being frustrated with is we really need to up our game as healthcare providers. We really do. And as administrators, we really, the individual healthcare providers are always recruiting people to try and come up here, like friends from school or,
Right.
Somebody we know or, somebody's cousin. Or, and it gets to the point where you're kind of begging sometimes. But I also, listened to a podcast on internal medicine, and they were talking about a conference. These three physicians were talking about a conference they go to, and they actually had a talk about the absence of resources in rural communities.
Wow.
And instead of getting mad because you're sending a patient from tertiary care at UCSF out to Del Norte County with expectation they're going to get all these services, and they bounce back to you in 3 months having gotten none of those services, it's not because people up here are stupid.
No.
It's because there's no there.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It just doesn't exist. And I have clearly seen people that passed away from lack of resources because we couldn't get past the barriers to care to give people what they needed to even be alive.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think this fits in
Yeah,
kind
definitely.
of horrifically.
This is
Actually.
graphically how all of that works.
Right.
Or one way that how all of that works.
Right.
Wow.
So
Wow, I didn't know. I had to say I doubted. We're going to do 2 episodes on gut health, and I didn't think we could do it, and we did it.
yeah, I know. Wow.
That's-
Yeah. So we'll see what my gut health is like when I come back from Mexico. I'm going to the Yucatan. I'm a little as a medical chaperone for
Right.
a school. Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
So I'll
right.
be gone for a while, and then I hope to come back and report on what my experience in medicine is like.
That's interesting.
I hope it doesn't involve hospitals, but
Yeah.
but things like pharmacies. I'm really curious to check out pharmacies and see what's up there.
and access.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
water, is it really that bad? Or
Right.
street vendors, are they really agents of death? Come on. So,
And and Montezuma's revenge, because it's not so much about from my understanding was, and this kind of goes in with what fits into what everything we've been talking about. It's not so much that there's an illness south of the border waiting for you.
right.
It's that you go into that context and you can't deal with what's there, and the people
Right.
who are already there are fine.
Exactly.
But you're not, because you've brought your
Right.
biome into
And they're
their
not dirty.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like I'm
just
drinking sewage if I get,
Right, right.
like ice in my drink.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, maybe you've just had too many antibiotics. Something.
I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll
All right.
see.
Well, we look forward to all of that as we do look forward to all of this all the time. So thank you very much, Lynn. When are we back? When are you back from this trip?
Early June.
Okay. All right. Well, have a wonderful time.
Yeah, I will.
All
It'll
right.
be fun.